Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
The Daily Compliance News for June 10, 2021, the Love Machine edition. And we begin with that story in Bloomberg, which details the incredible dysfunction that Bill Duhnke brought to the PCAOB, but it turns out the PCAOB was pretty dysfunctional before he got there. He only added to it, and of course his corruption and his corrupt intent also added to it. But the story that I think was the most startling and one we had not heard about was that a prior board member of the PCAOB had had an affair with, that's board member Jay Hansen, resigned with no explanation on the Friday night before Christmas 2016, 2 years before his term expired. Well, it turned out he'd had an intimate relationship with a subordinate, which then triggered a blackmail plot. Several people with knowledge of the internal investigation said that another employee had uncovered communications between the pair, and he tried to use the information to blackmail one or more people at the PCAOB. So Duhnke's corruption and ineptitude really knew no bounds, but seems to have fit right in at the PCAOB. Next up, we have the first of 2 new participants in the Daily Compliance News. This one comes from the Malay Mail, and it reports that the U.S. sentencing of the Malaysian unit of Goldman Sachs triggered a $1.26 billion payment by Goldman Sachs to the Malaysian government relating to its scandal involving 1MDB. According to the report, there is a 10-day deadline for Goldman to make the payment, which came to light on June 4, filing by the U.S. government in federal court in Brooklyn. So the cost to Goldman continues, and I would hope that other corporations will pay note to this, because the $600 million that Goldman got is really pale besides the billions they paid. Our next article comes from also another first-time contributor, the Toronto Star, who reports that former Bombardier executive Thomas Bimmer has been charged with bribery in a signaling corruption case. This involved payments for alleged bribery payments in connection with Bombardier's multi-million-dollar deal to install signaling systems for a railway in Azerbaijan. The bribes are alleged to have been in an amount of up to $100 million. And finally, our last story comes to us from our good friend Dylan Tokar at the Wall Street Journal Risk and Compliance Journal. And Dylan reports that the EU has a new cop on the white-collar beat. European Public Prosecutor's Office was launched last week and will investigate crimes involving EU funds, including COVID-19 funds. Laura Kudruta Kovesi will lead the Public Prosecutor's Office, and there's no precedent for a European public prosecutor, and she is going to make one. So the EPPO, or EPO, as I'm sure it will come to be known, could be a very powerful unit in the EU, and certainly with the corruption around COVID relief funds, has a big job in front of it. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.